So here we are. My intro video to my YouTube channel. Thanks for being here. Thanks for liking and subscribing if you dig it. A little bit about me. My name is Stefan Utzler. That's how you pronounce it. I am in Athens, Georgia. I'm a guitar teacher and a professional musician here. Um, I'm trying to do this thing like so many people are. This YouTube thing and this social media thing. I'll give you the Topps baseball card version real quick. Um, I was born and I grew up in Virginia. Um, I got my first guitar when I was 8. I came of age in the 90s. Um, I'm a father. I'm sober. Um, and I've played a bunch of different styles and I've done a bunch of different things. I went to college a little later in life. I'm a sociology major. And a peace building and conflict resolution minor. So I'm that guy. I try to be nice. It's not always easy. And growing up, I'm going to go through a couple of different bands and some things and show you some riffs. Talk about some things I've done. And growing up, wasn't easy always. I definitely didn't have a silver spoon, but it led me to some cool music. It led me to be inspired by a lot of really good music. So let me get into this. So when I was younger, the first guitar I found was my grandfather's. He played guitar a little bit, and my father actually was in a Beatles and Stones cover band. He was a drummer. But my grandfather had a guitar that had been in house fire in Virginia, and I was just enamored with it. And I'm not glamorizing that or romanticizing it. I just was. And he let me take it home. I didn't know how to tune it or anything, but I was playing. And I remember one night my mom was washing dishes. So I was probably about 6 or 7 at this point. And I thought I was playing Jumping Jack Flash. And I was. In my mind, I was on a major stage already. About the time I was probably 10 or 11, I started my first band. I remember being in 4th grade. None of us could play, but my cousin Sean, I was like, you're going to be the drummer. And then my friend Richard at the time, I was like, you're going to be the guitar player. I wanted to be the singer because I wanted to be Vince Neil. And it just was what it was. But and fast forward, by the time we were in 7th grade, so we'd have been about, 12, 13, we did that. We played the 7th grade talent show where we played an original song called Hands of Time, which was an 80s style power ballad. And we played the Cinderella song, Coming Home. We also played another original that I'll get to a little bit later. It was actually the very first song I ever wrote. But that song is interesting because it informs a lot of the way I would go about my playing and writing style throughout the rest of my life. I'll give you a couple examples of that. For better or worse, right? But growing up, I was the kind of kid that got to stay awake late with the grown-ups. So I was, how do you say, I experienced a lot of things, some good, some bad. I was witness to a lot of things that maybe kids shouldn't do. But one of the things that was very profound in my life was music. I mean, staying up late with the adults, I got to listen to Led Zeppelin and a lot of Tom Petty. So you'll see a lot of that kind of stuff come into my music and some of my musical endeavors and things like that. And Aerosmith. Aerosmith was the band, man. This was my first concert. I was 10 years old. But really, what probably pushed me the most to the guitar and would have been a mainstay in my life, and this is not a this is not a special story, was Led Zeppelin. And specifically Led Zeppelin, the song remains the same. I remember I had my first guitar, which was a really old, just a crappy acoustic guitar that looked like a Gibson Hummingbird from Finger Hut, if anybody remembers that. My mom got for me, and it played like crap. I know it did. I knew it did then. And I just sat with The Song Remains the Same. And I just tried and tried and tried to play along. Now, that's to say, I didn't know any chords. I didn't know anything. I just thought I was doing it, and that's fine. So it's about 8, 9, something like that. My friend, backing up a little bit, my friend that was in my fourth grade band that didn't know how to play either, his parents had a little bit more cash, and they could afford to send him to guitar lessons. But anyway, he got to go take lessons, and he would come back and he would show me chords and stuff. And immediately I would take these chords. I was always a pretty good guitar player, even as a kid. And I'll never forget the first weekend he showed me these chords. We wrote this song, which was an anti-drug song called Just Say No. Let me see if I can play you a little bit of it here. It was something like this, because these were all the chords we knew. I later added a guitar solo to that because he taught me the fifth position of the minor pentatonic, and it went. Something like that. But that was it. So I say that because I've spent my whole life writing guitar like that. I will learn a little bit of jazz, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I will immediately go and try to write a song to it or try to make it work for me. I can play stuff by ear and I can play other people's material, but I've always just been most interested in writing my own stuff. This is all that there is to it. Then this happened. Motley Crue came into my life. It was the first band that hit me so hard as a young man, because it wasn't my parents' band or anybody else's parents' band, and it just, for whatever was going on in my life as a child or whatever, it just resonated with me. The romance of it's like romantic chaos, Motley Crue was. And to this day, I know a bunch of Mick Mars riffs, but I don't play a lot of Motley Crue because it holds a weird, kind of special place in my heart, because it's, I just like listening to it, man. Later in life, long before sobriety, if you heard Motley Crue blaring through the speakers of my house, you knew that I was tight. And then, of course, this. An older riff, but really in 1985 when 5150 came out, I was young, and I experienced that record through the adults, of course. It just blew my mind. Like, I never heard guitar like that, just like everybody else. And I know that, like, when you think about, like, Eruption and things like that, and I think I've heard, like, maybe Nuno Bettencourt, so I say it was like a comet that came over. Well, all of Eddie's music was like a comet that was flying into our stratosphere, man. I mean, all the work on 5150, Get Up, and the Steinberger guitar and all that stuff. I mean, it was just amazing. And then so on and so forth. But of course, I like the first era of Van Halen. I mean, then this came into my life. I picked this Rush song because this is when Rush came into my life, which was, I guess, the late 80s when Roll the Bones came out. that being said, Rush ended up being my second concert, and Primus opened up for anybody that was saw that tour. I think it was the Frizzle Fry tour. I didn't know Primus, but just as another side note, they've always been a huge influence of mine. I love Larry Lalonde's playing, love it, and of course Herb. I mean, jeez, and Les. I mean, it's just an incredible band. But I guess about the time I entered high school, my home life kind of took a really, really dark turn. This is what came into my life. Black Sabbath. My grandfather gave me $5 for Christmas one year, and I immediately went and bought a Black Sabbath Greatest Hits album. Not We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll. They had another one out that I don't even know if you can find anymore. But it just opened my heart and mind to what I was going to do for the rest of my life and how I wanted my music to sound and feel at the time. And I remember there was a lot of chaos in my home. And I remember I had a stereo, one of those old that had like a record player on top. And it didn't have any speakers, but it had a set of headphones. And I would just sit with Sabbath, especially those first two records. Well, that Greatest Hits tape. And I would just sit and listen and try to play along. Now, I knew a few chords at this point. I didn't really know what a power chord was, but I knew some chords. And it just all made sense. Everything made sense. Now, at this point, I had my second guitar, which was another Fingerhut guitar, which was a Harmony. You've seen them. It was all black, and it had just the two single coil pickups and the little sort of chrome tailpiece. But this one was different, and I haven't been able to find one because I really want to replace that. This one had a headstock more like a Kramer or a Jackson. So if anybody out there knows where I can find one of those, please let me know. That one got lost in the melee. That was my life through my 20s. But also what's funny is I learned to play guitar, or most of my formidable learning at that time in my life was on that guitar with it was a little Rocktown amp. It sounded terrible, but it only had 5 strings on it because the high E had broken. And we lived so far out in the boonies in Virginia on the foot of a mountain. It was hard to find. There was no car. There was not a lot of money. As a matter of fact, I learned a lot of that stuff on that Harmony with 5 strings. And in the old days, when you went to the grocery stores, they had the little bread ties just on the thing. I would just grab a handful of those. Those were my guitar picks. Eventually, my buddy gave me a red Dunlop Tortex pick. And that was my first guitar. And then, of course, there was this. I remember somebody let me borrow Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads tribute on cassette. And that was, I remember his name was Dennis, and it was time for me to give it back. And I was like, I begged him to let me keep that tape. And to this day, the song remains the same, and Tribute are my 2 favorite live albums. Maybe my 2 favorite albums. I've always loved live. That Black Sabbath Live at Last album, love it, man. Love all the feedback. It's just so real, and the way they made records back then was different too. And that Randy Rhoads thing was just incredible. Okay, it would be an absolute travesty and tragedy if I did not mention Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' Pack Up the Plantation and U2's Under a Blood Red Sky album and movie. Even more specifically, the influence of Mike Campbell and the Edge's playing on me cannot be overstated. But that opened my mind up to a different style of writing, obviously, like Randy did to a lot of people. And that lasted all the way, that sort of era of my music lasted all the way up until I had my first really sort of, when I say big band, I mean big band in my life. I met somebody and I ended up having horns, a horn section and everything. So my musical taste took, I don't even know if it was my taste took a turn, but I was introduced to some things that I never considered as a musician, because in high school I started hanging out with the band people and started hearing jazz and certainly blues and R&B. And my dear friend Jimmy introduced me. Of course, the Blues Brothers soundtrack was massive, but then the original artists that played some of that music. It was just here again, it opened up my mind kind of like Black Sabbath did to all these other things. And it was wonderful. That music actually got us out of the hills of Virginia, and we moved to Charlottesville. We went there and we played the big long 4-hour long shows with people dancing, and funk was making such a big comeback, and having that kind of vibe was making it was wonderful. It was so much fun, and I learned so much about rhythm playing. And to this day, I'm still, just in my humble opinion, I'm a very good rhythm player, and it was because of all that funk. Something else came into my life, and it was introduced to me by my dear friend Jimmy again, and that really changed a lot for me too musically. Michael Hedges. And if anybody doesn't know Michael Hedges or any of that Windham Hill stuff, you can look at Leo Kottke, John Fahey. I'm not sure he was on Windham Hill, but John Fahey, Michael Hedges. And now there's a cat named Andy McKee that really, really, really honors that Michael Hedges style. There's so much out there. And I wanted to go in that direction. So it impacted me so much that I wanted to quit my rock band with the horns. I was the first in my little group of friends to get a place to live. So I remember having my apartment. It was $300 a month in town, and I was living with my girlfriend at the time. And all I had was this Jasmine, Takamine or Takamine, however you say it, Jasmine acoustic guitar, acoustic electric, and I was going to do it. That's what I was going to do. I was going to do acoustic music, and that influenced a great deal of the way I wrote and played at that time. Let me see if I can play a little bit of a Michael Hedges thing. There was a song off of Live from the Double Planet, or Live on the Double Planet, called Ready or Not. And now, this song is actually in a different tuning, but I learned it in standard tuning. Let's see if I can do. But I wanted to start making music like that. I was kind of ready to just give up my electric guitars and everything. I was like, man, I just really want a really, really nice acoustic guitar, and I just want to live like a vagabond, man. I wanted to be like Robert Johnson, just an acoustic guitar and just the clothes on my back. And I wanted to go make this music that, how to say this esoterically, it just came straight from my soul, and it wasn't influenced by other opinions and things like that. And yeah, but that was a neat period. And those people that were in that band, now at this point we're probably 18, 19, we ended up getting back together and just really pushing forward into this weird meld of like Rush, Paul Simon, and Funkadelic, and we did it for a lot of years, and it was great. Funkadelic and Rush are probably the bands I've seen, or Parliament Funkadelic, P-Funk, probably the two bands I've seen the most in my life. And George, if you're listening, Funkadelic, even more so than Ozzy Osbourne, was probably the band I wanted to play guitar in the most. I just like the fact that it didn't seem like it was always entirely scripted. Improv would be a huge thing in my life, and it's fun. I have a great deal of fun on stage improving, even if it's a little bit. I've gotten yelled at, and it's been wonderful. But since we're talking about Funkadelic, I'm going to play you a little bit of two of the songs that just really, really inspired me so much, and I'm playing them to you. Playing them for a couple of minutes. Standing on the Verge, that little F, A, B flat, C lick right there, that has got to be one of the most difficult funk riffs of all time. It just does. And then Bop Gun? What is that? I figured most of this stuff that I've played for you today, I figured most of that stuff out by ear. I know that there are going to be people in here say that's not how you play Unchained, and I know that that's not how you play Rain Song. I know that the tuning is different, and I may be a little off the mark even on some of this Funkadelic stuff. Before YouTube and before all this stuff, you would have to learn along with the record, which I did, and that often you learned it incorrectly. And then you found out later that it went another way. All this stuff I learned by ear. And to this day, I still don't go to YouTube or something immediately. I want to see if I can figure it out, because there might be something there that like if you just go straight to the source, you're going to miss all this cool stuff that happens along the way while you're learning it. So the point is go learn something wrong, right? Go learn it wrong, and then like just kind of take a look at it and see if there's something there that's like distinctly you. So what he said was he learned all that Ozzy stuff kind of wrong, but that helps you grow as a player. That's my point. It helps you grow as a player. Here I'm referring to an interview that Jakey Lee did with Tone Talk and Dave Friedman, where he talked about learning the Randy Rhoads Ozzy Osbourne songs and how he learned them wrong and how that kind of informed the way he played the music. That was something that was always important to me, and with my students I do the same thing. I tell them, I was like, try to learn it on your own before you go straight to YouTube and things like that, just because the guitar is such a cool instrument, because there's middle C in multiple places, or there's multiple different versions of the same note, and the physicality of where you're playing and these different things could totally sort of help you define your sound and style. And it's always been about that for me. Yeah, there are no rules here, and I'm glad of it. But yeah, it's been a fun ride, and I really appreciate you listening to this quick abridged story of my musical path. And please hit subscribe, ring the bell, like, and if you want to hit me up, I have a website, stefanutzler.com. That's kind of for my teaching and things like that, because that's really getting going here. If you need me to play on something for you, whatever you need, feel free to hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's stay in touch. I'll try to do this often, and keep an eye out for my shorts. I have a couple of cool things. I do some things with the guitar lately. It's actually guitar lately. And I'm also trying to get this stupid pajama party thing going on. I don't know why, but it just came to me, and I just kind of try to follow that. That's what this is, just following instead of resisting. Just follow it and see where it takes you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you soon.